Alrighty, welcome to another episode of our sex and dating series.
Sex and relationships.
Sex and relationships.
Not specifically dating.
I'm Dre.
I'm John.
And this is Voices in the Dark.
And we are learning how to human. And what could be more human than sex and relationships?
Indeed.
We had a lot of good feedback from our first episode about dating apps. I think we'll probably come back to that one at some point. We put up a poll that you can still take part in over on Instagram. We're at V in the D pod there. And you can get in touch through facebook.com/V in the D. And you can tweet us at V in the D. Or hit us up on the website, voicesinthedark.world, where you will find the show notes to this episode, which is all about nice guys. And nice guys
are the worst.
Yeah, they're not nice.
Awful people.
And this is, and you know, I can feel a lot of personal difficult stories coming on because I've definitely been the nice guy, and it's not good for anyone. Not for me, not for the people I was being quote unquote nice to. But we'll get into some definitions and all of that as we go. This is a subject which could definitely span many episodes, and maybe we'll come back to it. But we wanted to get into this one because we had a letter from one of our Patreon supporters. Thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon, by the way. It's like Netflix, but for creators and content producers that you like, and you can choose who you want to support.
And how much?
And you can go over to patreon.com/V in the D, and you can put a little recurring pledge, cancel at any time. There's rewards, and we definitely pay lots of attention to you, which is why when Brian wrote to us, we decided to make a whole fucking episode.
Yeah.
So Brian writes, I often get told I am a nice guy and that I give good advice to others, especially in relationship matters. I also get told I'll make a great boyfriend or husband to someone one day, yet I struggle to get into a relationship and then struggle even further to maintain one once I'm in it. The first part, struggling to get into a relationship, is often because I seem to fall for people who are either unavailable or patently not going to be interested in me, i.e. are out of my league. Why do I keep doing this? The second part, I wonder if my own thoughts on this answer lie in the first part. When I get into a relationship, I end up not enjoying being with my partner, usually because I find the impact on my own personal space and time too much to cope with. I struggle with social anxiety at times and often need time alone in my own space to calm down and feel safe. Do you have any recommendations for helping me get over this self-imposed hurdle?
Wow.
First off, thank you, Brian, for being so open and vulnerable and talking about something that I think a lot of people struggle with, men and women. Kind of inevitably, I suppose, as it's a question from a man, and we are, I think, men.
Mostly.
Mostly men, mostly human. There's going to be that angle to it, though. For our female listeners, we definitely want to hear what you think about the discussion that unfolds. So the nice guy thing, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, and it's spurred several weird subcultures, populated mostly by assholes. I don't know if you ever noticed. There is a subreddit on Reddit for nice guys, which is really cringeworthy, but there's even worse ones like Fedora, or like the people that are the stereotypical meme nice guy that people make fun of, but they actually band it together. There's even one community that has renounced women and sex altogether because,
because they're too nice?
Because they're clearly it's just a waste of time and resources and effort, and life will be better if they don't have to deal with it. There's all sorts of weird shit going on the internet, and people are finding one of the greatest things about the internet is also one of the creepiest, which is it helps people with strange ideas connect. And so people that would otherwise normally be kind of forced to, somehow get over their issues are now finding each other and supporting each other. Okay. Just like the really, really weird eating disorder ones that have formed, where there's people that are supporting each other in their eating disorder because they think it's good.
Okay, well, that's a lot to take on. This is why I don't go on Reddit. This is why I don't like Reddit. Nice guys, can we find some definitions? Well, there's some, obviously this is all going to be subjective, but as soon as this topic came up, I was taken back to when a good friend of mine gave me a PDF of a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy by a counselor and coach called Robert Glover. And I was like, what the fuck? At that point, I was just emerging from the smoldering wreckage of a very dysfunctional relationship. And I'm sure I'll be getting into that in the course of this episode. And my friend gave me this book, and I was like, what are you doing? Why do you want me to be not nice? Because of course on the surface it sounds like, well, why wouldn't you be nice? Nice by definition is nice, right? But what tends to be called nice when it comes to behavior, especially in relationships, is not all that it seems.
No.
And in this book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, that I'll refer to a bunch because it sucker punched me. And although like in the book, I certainly don't agree with all of this guy's opinions. It's a little misogynist at times, got some odd attitudes towards sex at times, or I think they're odd. But I think the core message that he's getting across is important and definitely helped me. He gives a suggestion of, so who is this nice guy? He says he's the relative who lets his wife run the show. He's the buddy who will do anything for anybody but whose own life seems to be in shambles. He's the guy who frustrates his wife or girlfriend because he's so afraid of conflict that nothing ever gets resolved. He's the boss who tells one person what they want to hear, then reverses himself to please someone else. He's the man who lets people walk all over him because he doesn't want to rock the boat. He's the dependable guy at church or the club who will never say no, but would never tell anyone if they were imposing on him. And what's kind of really important here is that these guys are not happy, they are angry.
Yep.
And that's the truth of if you're a people pleaser, and that's kind of what being a nice guy is, you're actually kind of simmering with this rage. And
there's heaps of resentment.
One of the main things that I think will come up repeatedly is that a lot of the giving, the being nice, is being done with a subtle and unarticulated expectation that you get something in return. Yeah,
it is quasi-Christian, this idea of being nice in spite of yourself for heavenly rewards. You know, it's I don't want to do this, but I'm going to because then I will get X, Y, Z.
Yeah. And then if you don't give me X, Y, Z, I'm really mad at you and suddenly I'm going to explode. It's those moments in everyday life where someone like your partner suddenly says, oh, you didn't take the bins out, and you just go mental and just go, well, you never give me any love or sex and I do all this stuff and you never care and you never acknowledge me. And they're like, what? Because you've never up until that point expressed any of your needs. And unless you express them, you end up in this passive aggressive mode where you're expecting your partner or people around you to be a mind reader, to be able to know what you need, and you're so scared of the rejection of asking for the thing that you want that you don't articulate it, and then you're so angry, like they should know me. They should know what I need. They know me. Have you told them though?
People don't even know themselves. To expect them to know you is foolhardy.
So here are just a bit more from this book. There's some descriptions. Nice guys are givers. They frequently state that it makes them feel good to give to others. They believe their generosity is a sign of how good they are and will make other people love and appreciate them. They fix and they caretake. If a person has a problem, has a need, is angry, depressed, or sad, nice guys will frequently attempt to solve and fix the situation.
Oh God, am I a nice guy?
Sometimes you're a nice guy. And this is a problem. I think I was getting on your case about this recently, being too nice. Thinking that you can help other people and they're going to turn around and appreciate it, when actually people often want you to draw clearer boundaries.
That's also really annoying. It's like, why do I have to draw just figure out a boundary. Like, you're outsourcing boundary creation to me. Why?
I'm not out. You need to set your boundaries for yourself. Like, a boundary is only significant that you draw it there. It only means anything if people cross it. It's not about you doing it for them. It's about you doing it for you.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. We're going to get more and more like resistance from each other as we go through this. They seek approval from others, a universal trait, Robert Glover says. Everything a nice guy does or says is at some level calculated to gain someone's approval or avoid disapproval. They avoid conflict. They believe they must hide their perceived flaws and mistakes. They try and do the right way. They try and find the right way to do things. They repress their feelings. Interestingly, he says they often try to be different from their fathers. So it's kind of a rejection of a model they don't want to be. And in the process, it's kind of the more, I think, dodgy aspect of this book, where he makes a case that there's a generation of men who were raised by women due to absentee fathers or deaths from war. And as a consequence, they lack male role models and have grown up with the idea that you need to please women and be what they want you to be it your mothers or other female figures, and therefore don't articulate the things that you want. Maybe there's some truth to that. But
there is a certain truth to that. And also there is a certain truth that that's maybe kind of an okay or good thing, as women have gained more rights, but it's kind of gone in a funny way, which is it's transactional. Right. It's, I'm going to be nice so I get sex.
Yeah, and I find that so sickening.
It is distasteful, and it is anti-feminist. You think you're being, feminist and equal rights to women by, trying to please them and doing what they want, but you're doing it in a way that actually is demanding of an outcome, which is extremely sexist and weird.
And a lot of pressure as well. Like when it becomes the transaction, this is where the rage comes from. But I took you on these dates and I bought you flowers and I didn't press anything and I didn't try and force you to do anything. Where's my sex?
Yeah.
You're like, well, it's probably not coming because that's really creepy.
Super creepy.
The flip side of the descriptions that Glover just gives are, here's the behavior, the traits, the not so nice traits of the nice guys. They're dishonest, hide their mistakes and avoid conflict, say what people think they want to hear and repress their own feelings. They're secretive. They compartmentalize. They're manipulative, controlling. They give to get. They're passive-aggressive, full of rage, have difficulty setting boundaries, are frequently isolated, and are often attracted to people in situations that need fixing. Like, oh, I can fix this up, and then I'll get something in return. It's a difficult book to read, I would say. And here's, before I guess we just spin off into our own discussion about this and look at specific things that Brian asked, what struck me when I read this, because when I started reading it, I was like, no, I don't like this. I think this is very simplistic and so on. And then there were some quotes here from the partners of some of the men that Glover was counseling. And here's one, for example. He's constantly trying to please me. He'll do anything for me except really be there for me. He'll go shopping with me even though I know he doesn't want to. The whole time he will just sulk, which makes me miserable. I wish he would just tell me no sometimes. And that one in particular really hit me. The fact that another person might want you to refuse them sometimes. To create a sense of having respect for you, that you said, no, I don't want to do that, instead of going, oh, of course I'll come, and then ruining the experience because you didn't actually want to be there.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of mean by boundaries. When we were talking about it, it was sort of needing to draw boundaries, say, with friends or clients, where people will just keep on, like the security services in this country, they will keep taking more and more liberties from you unless you say no.
Yeah, it's very important. But also, I mean, nice guys, step your game up. If you're going to pretend well.
Yeah.
If you're going to make someone believe that you want to do something that you don't want to do, you have to sell it. Otherwise, it's disgusting. It becomes a display of, I don't know how to put it, but it's a poor showing.
Yeah.
No one enjoys that. Like you've done neither the nice guy nor the asshole approach, if you want to classify it as those two things. You've done neither. You're somewhere in the middle.
Maybe that's part of the problem. You can tell that they're trying to exist between two worlds and not managing to be in either. So maybe it's good to flip back to Brian's question. And the first part is like, why does he seem to fall for people who are either unavailable or out of his league?
That is a very common thing. I would venture as far as saying no one's out of your league, mate.
100%. I think that's part of the core problem here, is looking at people as though they are out of your league, because what that reveals is you do not think that you're enough. And that's at the core of this nice guy syndrome, a toxic sense of shame over the notion that you're not enough and you need to hide aspects of yourself, not express what you need and what you want, try and please the other person to win them over to you because God knows they need to be won over.
Yeah.
And that undermines your confidence. It fucks yourself up and it doesn't make you attractive.
No. And you have to realize that if the version of yourself that you'd like to be isn't attractive to that person, you have to make a committed choice to be seductive. Not sort of try to buy love by being needy and nice. If you truly want someone that is out of your league, in the sense that if you were completely authentic to your current level of who you are, without changing, they wouldn't like you. So that you have to manipulate or be a different version of yourself, which doesn't feel quite right for you. But you have to be prepared to do that, to get that person, if they're so important to you, if you want to seduce them in some way. And that is a commitment that, and also a level of skill that most people don't have. So you have to be prepared to do something quite advanced.
But why do that? Unless you're talking about like trying to improve yourself in some way, maybe, you know, give up being a massive racist so that you become more appealing. Then if you're trying to put on a mask to pretend to be someone you think that they want, it's never going to work out or feel good, because they're only, if they did fall for you, they're going to be in love with the mask that you put on, and they're not going to be in love with you.
Perhaps. I can see some ways around that in some cases. So maybe that person has got their own baggage and issues, so that they respond, like, instead of someone who's unavailable, maybe they respond to someone who treats them like their father did.
Okay.
And you don't want to do that really necessarily, because maybe it was in a way that wasn't particularly nice in this case. But you see that they respond to that. And maybe you think, but this then goes white knight syndrome, you know, you're trying to save them from themselves. But I say, if you're conscious that that's what you're doing, maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you have to be cognizant of the fact that it might take a really long time, or maybe never actually succeed at bringing them over from not needing that anymore.
I think needing is one of the key issues here, that if you feel you need somebody, then that's a really bad energy to bring into a seduction situation.
Yes.
Nothing is less seductive, apart perhaps from genocide, than being needy. You come in and essentially you like dump all of this weight of need that is coming like from every pore in your body on the person that you're trying to seduce, and they're like, whoa, like, what is that?
It is the antithesis of value. Our social brains in the last billion years worth of evolution have all been, well, no, maybe not billion was a bit, no, let's say the last 200 million years of evolution have all been towards figuring out what's important and what's not. Like, you have that, you want as quick as possible a calculation over, is this valuable or not? And human beings have taken that to the extreme. But our programming is still based on shortcuts. And something that is easily available, because in nature, anything that's easily available isn't valuable to a human brain. So by having a need and therefore being infinitely available for the other person, you've priced yourself at zero. And we have a brain that has mechanisms designed to figure out hierarchy and value. Now, there are also counteracting mechanisms to that, but they fight back and forth between those two things. If you've essentially put yourself as the omega wolf, or, you know, the bottom hen in the pecking order, then the brain of of the person you're trying to be a suitor for will think that you're not very valuable. You're not the kind of companion with which genes should be spliced and put forward, because you won't take advantage of situations, you won't defend yourself or your future children. There's built-in DNA mechanisms to try and protect their own DNA by making it go as far as possible. And it's ingrained in evolution. You can't fight that.
That's a powerful argument. From the personal experience side, I guess so. Like, imagine this in terms of, like, say, boundary setting. To move to, I guess, the second part of Brian's question, the part about if you get in a relationship and you find that really you don't enjoy it because you no longer feel you have your own space, and I'm gonna suggest here that that's because you aren't asking for it, or because if you do ask for it and they're like, no, you don't want to spend time with me, you kind of freak out and you don't want that conflict and so on, but you end up miserable. Let's imagine that if you're in a relationship with someone and every conversation you have, you're like, should we do this or this? And they're like, oh, whatever you want, whatever you want, whatever you want, you decide. Well, unless you're someone who just enjoys stomping over everybody else and getting your own way, in which case you probably never ask the question, like, what would you want? That's so boring that you might as well have a blow-up doll rather than a partner, an imaginary friend, because you're not creating a relationship in that situation. You've just got a henchman who just does what you say. And that's not rewarding. Part of the nature of a quality relationship, I think, is that it is created between the two of you.
I can fall into that sometimes purely because I'm easygoing. Like, let's say, choose what to eat for dinner. Mm-hmm. You know, after maybe 2 or 3 attempts of going, oh, let's do this, and the other person's like, no, I don't really like that. You know, I will fall into, I don't really care if it's a burger or a pizza. I just want to spend time with you.
Okay, but what you did first was important, which is you made suggestions.
Yeah, but at some point, if my suggestions repeatedly get shut down throughout time, I will get to a point where I'm always like, I'm easy, whatever you want.
Okay, I'm not sure that's so good.
Probably not, but, you know, what's interesting to me is to get food in my belly and to spend time with the other person, not what I'm eating. It's completely inconsequential what's going inside.
Well, I often feel like that, but I also think that on that specific case, I think it's pretty annoying to Jamie when I'm like that. We're like, I don't care what we eat. Food is kind of unimportant to me. He's like, that's not helpful. Mm-hmm. He's actually looking for input on what it might be nice to have for dinner, and to know that I actually want it, rather than just, you know, I'll calmly consume whatever you give me. Because if you're creating food, you would like to know that the person is at least somewhat interested in it.
I also fall into that paradigm when I quickly realize that the dynamic is the other person wants you to pick the thing that they would like to pick, but are holding back from saying out loud. Yeah, well, I don't want to play that game. So whatever you want. It's like, oh, no, anything. It's like, really? Anything? Okay, well, fine. Let's go and, you know, eat off the street. You know, like, it's like, oh, no, not that. Like, okay, well, what do you want?
Well, that's a good example of the kind of passive aggression which nice guys get into, as well as plenty of other people, where they do want something, but they're not going to tell you what it is, but they're going to be total dicks until you guess it. And that's so toxic. If I find myself around people like that, I don't have time for it anymore. So to get into the personal storytelling, an ex of mine, it was like mega passive aggressive, wall to wall passive aggression, and I didn't set boundaries. In fact, I don't think I'd even been told about or thought about what boundary setting meant, because I think most people, most of the time, have some sort of level of decency and consider, you know, your feelings to some extent. This person didn't. I think unconsciously. So the passive aggressive way of doing things is, I am going to clearly be in a bad mood and grumpy, and I'm going to be giving you evils or ignoring you, and I'm not going to tell you what the problem is, and I'm going to deny to you that there is a problem until you magically work out what it is. And this, in part, was my fault. It's my fault that he acted that way, because I enabled it. I played the game where I was like, oh, but I'm really sorry, whatever it is, I'm sorry for it. Let me find out the thing that I'm guilty of so that I can apologize. That's enabling, rather than going, well, to be honest, your behavior is unacceptable. If there's a problem, tell me what it is and we'll talk about it. If you're not going to tell me, I'm going to go do something else. Like, I'm not going to be subjected to this silent torture. You don't get to play this silly, immature game. Talk to me when you're ready to talk to me. Ciao. And I was very much in the caretaking role in this, where there was plenty of opportunities for it, various like misfortunes and issues that unfolded for him, but also he had a lot of health problems. So I found it pretty easy and natural to want to care for my partner and want to, you know, be there, supportive. But it is very true that I discovered in myself a lot of growing resentment that I expected something back. So I was being the nice guy. I wasn't actually giving freely because I felt a balance sheet in my head of, how come I'm not getting any sex? How come things aren't as fun as they used to be? I'm doing all of this for you. I'm buying, like, fucking week on week, I'm buying you a rose, literally. I'm getting you coffee from the shop that you love every morning you want. I'm finishing my work before I actually should or need to, and I'm getting stressed about the fact I'm not completing what I need to, so that I'm back when you get home from work so we can spend time together.
Yeah, I've been there.
So I'm like building up more and more problems in my own life because I'm not getting my work done. I'm running around trying to please someone else, and it only seems to get affection when I give something that's bigger than the last thing. So I'm getting like angry and anxious and desperate, and it creates this cycle that goes round and round. And why should he have respected me for this? He shouldn't. If someone's running around desperately fawning like the desperate unlucky suitor in all those fairy tales, we laugh at those people. You're like, you're not a respectable or a person worthy of respect.
Yeah.
You are desperate, and you're going, the only way that I am going to be worthy of your love is if you choose to give it to me, so I'm going to keep doing this mating dance until you do.
That is a very, very important thing to be aware of. I think there is kind of a gray area a little bit in one sense. When the nice person is nice indiscriminately, then no partner will ever value that they're being nice to as well. Doesn't matter if it's, you know, a little bit more compared to other people. But if they can see that you have clear boundaries and in your respect for yourself when dealing with others, but you're being accommodating to them because you feel they have a particular need or you're trying to help them through a difficult time, that is acceptable to a point.
And there's time limits on these things.
There is time limits. If the person just keeps taking advantage and doesn't sort themselves out, they have a problem with themselves.
Yes.
And you can't fix that. You can only give them the best possible environment for them to fix themselves. But unless they take you up on that, there'll be a point where it becomes toxic and you have to stop.
This goes back to something I said in the Modern Stoic episode number 20, I think, that we recorded yesterday, which is the difference between someone saying, help me and save me.
Yeah.
And help me still requires them to be able to take action. They're asking you to give them a helping hand, help them get back to their feet. Save me is like, I give up, you take responsibility for me. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to save him.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work.
It doesn't. And one of the main parts of it was, I guess, that I was doing all of this unconsciously, but like I said, with that balance sheet going on in my mind. Again, I wasn't totally conscious of. I just knew I was angry.
I would say you might end up helping the person, but at the cost of the relationship. Mm-hmm. So you could stick it out as a nice guy through like 3 or 4 years worth of drudgery and sludge. But with the knowledge that at the end, if you've helped save the other person, most likely the relationship is dead.
They probably don't need you at that point.
They don't need you, and they've lost respect for you because of how much you've put into them, which is unfortunately another side effect of how our brains work. we think we deserve what we get.
Shit. So here's an example that goes directly to what Brian was asking about, needing to have your own space, you know, feeling crowded. Because if you're in a relationship with someone, and especially if you move in together, suddenly you don't have that easy access to your own space anymore. And I was feeling the need of this. I wanted to finish writing something. And so I'd said a little while, floated the idea to my then partner. Was like, I think what I need to do is, like, I'm going to go away. I thought I'd stay with a relative on an island and just kind of shut myself away to just try and focus on doing this thing. That wasn't interpreted as, I just want to go and do this thing for me. It was interpreted as, oh, so you want to be away from me. You don't want to be here, which means if you want to be somewhere else, you don't want to be with me. It was seen as a personal attack. And I think that's maybe the sort of dynamic that Brian's getting at here, where when you see those responses, it becomes hard and intimidating to ask, or not even ask, but like say, this is something I need.
Yeah. But I would say at this point in my life, if that happened consistently, I would realize that I can't be with that person. Because it'll be the equivalent of going out with a disabled person in my mind. Mm-hmm. Like a severely mentally retarded person, because there's a difference in cognition and awareness. The other person is so wrapped up in their own ego and identity that everything is in relation to them. Other people's actions are about them. Yeah. You know, things, and it's I think Peter Sage would call it was it by me, to me? Which one's I can't remember the...
To me is like the least positive level. Like everything feels like it's happening to you. You're the victim.
They're stuck in that level. And I no longer have time for those people. Like, it'll be sad, be like, oh, you know, you have potential, but you can't. You just can't. Like, you have to treat it as if, like, oh, you're actually a toddler. I can't date a toddler. That's illegal.
I think a tactic, so I just totally fucked up on this and caved. As that was towards the end of the relationship, thankfully. One tactic is to use humor and see if that can work, which is like, oh yeah, of course. I just totally want to be away from you. That's definitely it. It's not like I'm coming back afterwards either. No, I just need to be the fuck away from you. Ha ha ha. And if they can laugh and like discharge that kind of fear and see that it is very silly, I think there's some hope there.
Yeah.
If they can't, I think they might need counseling.
Something I think happens a lot is by the time people have to communicate and explain things like this, they haven't established parameters and frameworks to allow them to do that, because no one kind of starts to communicate super honestly and freely and openly at the beginning, because everything's going smoothly and fine. So you haven't built precedents of, when I say this in this particular way, when we're by ourselves, it means that I'm being honest and true, you know? And so when you're doing it at a moment that's emotionally charged, the other person can't believe or trust you. So communication is super important, and people shy away from it because they feel like it ruins the magic or it kills mystery. But to be able to at the beginning go, you know, we've been doing this for a couple of weeks now, and actually I really, really like you, and I don't want to date anyone else. Are you dating anyone else? Is that okay? Like, can I talk to you about that? Like, instead of kind of waiting for it to become a fight or, you know, a charged moment or something, or assuming that if someone says, do you want to go out? Do you want to be my boyfriend? That it means that it's exclusive. Like, you have to say it out loud.
I think, yeah, you're right. A lot of people think that that's spoiling the magic, but that's nonsense, because both of you are not going to have exactly the same sense of what a relationship is or a dating situation is. And unless you also can articulate the fact, like, I think I've encountered this, and I really respect it from people talking to me, or I've heard from friends where they go, okay, I really want to like move forward with this, see more of each other, but you need to know, like, I'm a bit of an introvert. I really need time on my own to recharge my batteries. That's not a statement about you, but it's a need that I have, and I need you to understand that and respect it.
Yeah.
And when it's like an invitation like that, when you say, this is a need that I have, please, can you support me in this? It's not framed as a kind of demand taken from you. So I try and do this actively. If I'm struggling to like keep up a fitness regime or something, I've asked Jamie, like, say, I need to spend more time going to the gym, and I find it difficult to tear myself away from just lying in bed with you. Could you please help me keep to this discipline? Thank you. And that does help, you know, a little shove, get my ass out the door.
And sometimes simply just saying it to the other person so that they go, yeah, I'll help you do that. And maybe you probably go and get up and go to the gym more often yourself now.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's okay, that you don't feel like, oh, what if he thinks I'm abandoning him by going to the gym? I'd rather just be here and cuddle. Like, to have that kind of like, oh yeah, no, it's fine.
It's one of these tricky things where it's, you know, on paper, it's probably always nicer to stay there and cuddle. However, if that's all you do, a lot of the architecture of your life and of yourself starts to collapse, and the other person, like you yourself, is not going to respect you anymore. You're not showing yourself you respect yourself if you stop doing the things that are important to you as an individual, be that taking time for yourself, your physical fitness, spending time with your friends who are not their friends. If you stop doing that, you're sending a message to yourself, I am not respecting the things that I know are important to me, and you're showing the other person that you also are being a pushover. Now, remember what we were talking about, that the relationship expert and counselor Esther Perel said, that the studies are in and they show that a person finds their partner most attractive, most desirable when you see them doing their thing. Like, maybe that's in their space, maybe they're like a speaker, maybe they're a woodworker, maybe they're a painter, and you're watching from the side and you're like, wow, I love this person. Look at them doing their thing. That's so attractive. And yet, it's one of the things we could be afraid of asking for, the thing that you do on your own for yourself. Maybe it's not like totally isolated, but it's not a thing that you do with your partner.
I have a little metaphor for how you should operate in terms of communicating with your partner. And it's an example that I formed after watching The Sopranos. And what invariably happened is that when the wives or girlfriends were cornered by an FBI agent, they were quickly threatened or cajoled into doing something they didn't have to do, because the husbands, trying to protect them and maintain, prevent them from being legally sort of tied to themselves in crime. So there's a word for it, when basically if you're aware of a crime, you're kind of complicit into it. Have actually caused harm, because then the FBI sort of could manipulate them. If they'd actually sat down with their wife and go, look, if the cops say this, you don't have to do anything. Ask for a lawyer. If, if someone says this, that's not true. You have these and the rights. Like, they should have been briefed and prepared.
So what did they do instead?
They just left it. Like, they maintained like a wall, a divide between personal life and mob life. But in any time that somehow a police person or FBI agent manages to kind of get a hold of someone, let's say, I think it was Adriana in The Sopranos that got caught doing drugs or something that they could punish her for. Okay, and they go, well, we'll send you to jail unless you start doing this for us. And all sorts of other things, which she could have gotten out of by asking for a lawyer or by demanding certain things or just simply saying shut. They couldn't have done anything to her too bad if she'd taken her time and not trusted them. But in the absence of information, so you have to operate like that. You have to assume that there's all sorts of things that could happen, that it's much better to start talking and explain and go through. Like, for example, saying sometimes I need to be by myself, like saying it before it happens. So when it happens and you don't have to go, sometimes I need to be by myself. That's why I'm running away for 2 weeks. And the person's like, oh, this seems dramatic and sudden, like treat it like preemptive preparation to scenarios that could affect adversely your relationship.
I think it's also not a case then that you have to fear that it could be too late. Again, being honest, not as a blunt instrument, but as a, hi, I need to express something to you. I've had this thing going on in my mind and I feel I just need to get it out. Like, I haven't talked about this before, but I need to have some time for myself too. It's not that I don't love spending time with you, but things are a little out of balance here for me, and I need some me time. We even have a word for it now, a term for it that you can refer to, and that's a tricky one, because if you do it a bit later, it can seem like, oh, you're getting tired of me. Like, well, no, it's more that I've not been maintaining my healthy balance of my needs. Yeah. And after a certain point, that bank account has run out. Yeah. And I have to go and recharge it.
But, if you haven't established rules and parameters and frameworks early on, then it seems sudden and weird to the other person, which then makes them feel like it's about them. By laying things out at the beginning, being open, communicating.
Yeah, not the very beginning, like, okay, you want to come on a date? I've got a PDF that I'm going to give you of my needs and expectations.
But if something comes up in, like, when you feel it in the pit of your stomach, like, I really want to be able to say this, like, that's the time to say it. Don't wait. And also, it's okay if that means that does ruin something. Like, you know what I mean?
You can't successfully have a relationship with someone who isn't able to respect your needs.
Yeah. If you're afraid that being honest over personal boundaries will end the relationship, then you shouldn't be in that relationship.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the reality often. One example I think I've told on the podcast before that is from a friend that I really liked, a very dramatic boundary setting. Well, not very dramatic, but you decide for yourselves.
Okay.
His girlfriend was consistently late whenever they were meant to meet up, like always, to the point where it's like guaranteed it's going to be 15, 20, 30 minutes late. And after this had continued for a while, he just confronted her and said, I think she turned up late, and he was like, so, do you think your time is more valuable than mine? She's like, what? What do you think? Tries to make it a bit of a joke. And so he's like, no, this is not a joke. You clearly think that your time is more valuable than my time, and you're willing to just waste my time for the sake of yourself. That's not okay. I'm not going to accept it. If we say we're going to meet at a particular time, you need to be there at that time.
Yeah.
She wasn't late after that. Also didn't live in fear. And I'm sure, whilst it was a serious conversation, like, you don't get to just laugh this off. It wasn't cruel, but also that's important. And I have enjoyed, to flip this around, being on the receiving end of that kind of boundary setting. And a lot of times, and this can lead us to the whole idea of shit tests, a lot of times the person who is doing the bad behavior or the disrespectful behavior, even if it's unconsciously done, they're looking to see how far they can push you, and they want you, like the quote I read earlier, to say, no, that's not okay. They're seeing, like, do you respect yourself, and are you going to mark that line for me?
Yeah. But I think we've veered off into the nice guys that somehow have managed to get themselves in a relationship, which I think is rarer than the large masses of people sitting in friend zones around the world and feeling very butthurt about it.
Butthurt.
Yes. And I just want to say, and we were referencing a YouTube video we watched earlier, which I tried to find because I remember watching it ages ago.
I will put a link. It is from T1J. Who you can find online. Very cool guy.
You don't get a cookie for being nice. You're supposed to be nice. Like, think of it as your entry ticket, like, to amusement park. Like, that the initial £5 gets you in maybe a bag of candy or something, but you still have to pay for the ride. Like, there's a separate. Being nice just gets you entry level.
Yeah.
Into humanity. Being a cunt would mean that you probably get dismissed and, ostracized if people realize that you are. Whereas being nice, you're like, okay, maybe this person is worthwhile, engaging with it on any sort of level.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean shit other than that.
It's like, just because I did the dishes doesn't mean you have to give me everything that I want. Like, doing the dishes is something that you all have to do.
Yeah.
It's like, I did the dishes. Why can't I have double anal?
That's the clear consequence.
Quote of the episode.
Yeah, tweet it out.
Well, you're right. So if we want to talk about nice guys who aren't in relationships and are in the friend zone and don't understand how to get out of it, what do they need to do?
First of all, they need to stop being indiscriminately nice. And only be nice in the sense of be a nice human being, be kind. So like someone trips up, you lift them up, kind of thing. But don't, I don't know, do a ridiculously over-the-top birthday party for that, friend that you'd actually really like to fuck in the hope that she'll notice that you really want to fuck. And you have to go for people that you want to be romantic with. You have to say something like, can I kiss you? Or lean in and see what happens. And if they pull away, you haven't seduced them. You haven't seduced their mind. Someone will only ever want to kiss them when they're thinking, I wonder why he hasn't kissed me yet. Or like, I'd really wish he'd kiss me. And then you do it and it's like perfect. But if it's a complete surprise and in that moment they realize that you're attracted to them, that is an instant shutdown. Even if there was a possibility that they might develop romantic feelings for you, the fact that it happens so suddenly and in such a transactional kind of way, they start to think about every other moment that you shared with them in like oh, that's why. And that's off-putting. So you have to figure out whether or not the person is attracted to you right now. And if you're not sure, you have to try and raise the buying temperature, as some pickup artists would say. You have to do things that are not nice and friendly, but that are romantic. And not romantic, like over-the-top romantic, movie romantic, but things that are not misconstrued, like, little signals, like a friendly, like a touch that is not like a friend touch, like oh, how are you, like. And
he's squeezing my arm for those who are only listening on audio.
You have to do little tests. You have to basically, it's like a negotiation. If you think, what's a good example? There's little bits that kind of let each other know what's going on, and that does need to be subtle, actually. So we were saying about being open and honest and saying things up front. Unfortunately, that does not seem to work for romantic things unless both people are at the same place at the same time. So it has to be more like do a tiny thing which makes the other person go, but they're not sure. And then see how they react and back and forth. So you have to become seductive. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Well, if you think of a random example of it, let me know. I was thinking on a sort of a related point to this, or like maybe it's an overarching point. The notion of this kind of the seduction or trying to make yourself appealing, I think, do not think of it as I am trying to get something. Think of it as I am trying to share something.
Yeah.
I have something in me that I want to share with you. It's not I am trying to break into this store and take the goods that I want from it, which is, someone just wants you for that. It's not really very appealing. But if you're like, oh, they're interesting. I'm intrigued by this. Okay, I'm going to open the store and you can come in.
And you have to be prepared to fail.
Yeah, of course.
You have to be very prepared. Once again, T1J, in the end of his video, he says, you're dealing with a person. That's another human being. They have their own goals and desires and wishes. To think that you can overwrite them like a computer program with must love John, it's sickening, really.
Yeah. It's back to it being all about you, being the center of the universe. Like the fact that they're not interested in you, why would you think that's simply about you? Unless nobody likes you, when maybe you need to ask, am I the asshole in the room? Then, well, okay, that person doesn't like you. They also don't like chocolate ice cream. I mean, not everybody is going to like exactly the same things.
No.
It's pretty straightforward in that
I think
respect.
One of the things that gets these supposed nice guys is the fact that it's probably not the first time they're getting rejected. Like one of the things that seems to generate a nice guy is not getting laid until much later in life. It's very hard to find someone that got laid at like 14 that falls prey to this kind of dynamic. It's when there's an set of expectations and disappointments and resentments that builds over the years as you, maybe you're a bit nerdy, maybe you're not like the most confident person at the beginning, you know, and let's be frank, in high school, it is the jocks that get laid more often, because maturity is just starting to develop, and it's very, very different. Whereas maybe you'd have success later in life as a Bill Gates type, because by that point, you know, women or men are mature enough to go, you know, that I'm not just looking for like something simple, or like there's a certain level of maturity and difference in what is attractive that happens with age. That's what I'm trying to say. But that means that a lot of men get to a point where they have not gotten and have made up in their mind both that it's less than it is or more than it is sex, relationships, and everything. Okay. And there's all sorts of other little programs going on. And when they consistently validated in feeling like, oh yeah, I'm a nice guy, but I'm, you know, nice guys finish last, it just feeds into this weird narrative. And I'm not sure what the best way to prevent this. Maybe just making all 14-year-olds God, have a state supplied prostitute. Well, they do that to disabled people in the Netherlands. Did you know this?
Do that too.
Or is it, or maybe it's Nordic countries. I can't remember. There's some countries in which people that are that can't get laid, basically, because they're not in a position to do that very effectively, get state-supplied prostitutes.
I think it's the notion of being inducted into the world of sex by a more mature, like somewhat older person that's still, you know, all consensual, let's make that clear, could be so positive. And I think in various, like, I can't remember any of the details now, but cultures that exist, that's kind of that's the norm. That you're not. Why would we expect that two teenagers who are both virgins would know how to have good sex in a respectful, mutually fulfilling way, as opposed to learning from somebody else who has got some more experience?
Yeah. And kids especially need to know that sex is neither as good or as bad as they think it is.
Yeah, that's a big point.
You know, it's good, it's important, it's part of life, and it's great to do it, but it's not the be-all and end-all. It's not what you should hang up all your dreams and aspirations, you know. If you do get it regularly, you do get to a point where, at least unless you've got a hole that you're trying to desperately fill, but
so to speak.
Yeah. But as an adult, there is a point where sometimes you'd be like, oh, you know what? Can you take a rain check? I want to go and play basketball with my friends. You know, there will be situations like that which are unthinkable to a teenager. You know, I would have, if someone said, "Do you want to have sex now?" You know, I could have been in the middle of whatever, and I would have gone, "You're like, yeah," like I would have driven 100 miles. You know, but that changes through life, and if you never get to that point because you're not getting any, and so it keeps building up in its importance in your mind, then you become one of these weird people.
Yeah, you just become enraged by it, wanting this chalice, this holy grail, but it's not what you think it is, unfortunately, or fortunately. I wanted to just loop back briefly, and I was thinking of another friend of mine who manages just in his natural way of being to act in this very kind of alpha male way. Not that he needs to like be the leader of other guys or like strut his stuff exactly, but it's hard to not just kind of step back and go, oh wow, when he tells some stories of how he's interacted with women that he's interested in. And just a small one was he'd sort of been seeing this girl for a little while, and she was kind of doing like hot and cold. She wasn't sure if she wanted to get into it. Maybe was a bit scared that it would be more intense or she wouldn't have the time to commit to it. And so she tried to friend zone him and was like, I think it would be better if we're just friends. And he was like, well, we're not going to be friends. Either this is going to be we're seeing each other in a romantic way, or I don't need you in my life. I don't want to be your friend. Well, guess who came back wanting to be in a relationship after that? And that's not going to work for everybody, but no. Fuck me, that's good. That's good because you're saying, no, what I want from the situation is this. I'm not going to accept that I'm not going to like compromise my feelings and say I just want to be friends, quote unquote, because that's not how I feel. And I think we see this on the other end of relationships where you're like, oh, we'll still be friends. Well, even if you do end up friends, it's usually like months or years later where you found what being a friend is with somebody that you were romantically involved with before. Because in that immediate post-relationship space, that's not what you are. You're two lovers trying to understand who the fuck you are without being able to have sex and be that intimate anymore.
Yeah. And when there's no intimacy, romance disappears. If you allow there to be a relationship absent intimacy, it will become a friendship. Like, it will end up in that place.
Sometimes friends can have sex, but it's a different thing. Not us. Yet. I feel like
when we reach 2,000 Patreon subscribers,
we'll be live streaming on Chatterbait. So I had a few little notes that I'd made of like suggestions of what to do to avoid falling into these nice guy traps.
Okay.
But there was something that's now just falling out of my head. I had some. It was related to that stating what you actually want. Yes, it was about sex. It was part of the Nice Guys, No More Mr. Nice Guy book, which is a lot of nice guys, according to this dude, are very sexually frustrated. And that's because a lot of nice guys think, now I'm interested to know what you think of this, it's all about giving the other person, or in this case, usually women, pleasure. And they do not ask for what they want. And I've also found this in myself.
That is how I sex.
Okay, well, we'll talk about you in a second.
Okay, go on.
Let me finish the point. That I've done that sometimes too, and sometimes that's fine. I want to get the other person off, and that's what I want from that situation. And yet, if I reflect back on where I've just been there, and the other person is clearly taking what they want, and they are super turned on by it, and I'm part of it, that's felt incredible. Like, you know how much they're getting off over doing this stuff to you because that's what they want. That's awesome. And yet sometimes I've shied away from playing that role of being no, this is what I want right now and I'm taking it. I'm not saying do that all the fucking time in this kind of one-way dynamic, but don't shy away from going, no, right now this is my time. It's like, it's my birthday and I'm going to do what I want to. And, provided everyone's saying, yes, this is what I want to happen, that's awesome. But if you never actually ask or take what you want from those scenarios, you are going to be very frustrated. Now you.
I don't think I have any particular bit of sex that I'm like, this is the part I want. Like, any and all of it is fine and nice and I like it. Like, so it's not like I want this, I want that. Like, it's more whatever they're going to do is exciting and interesting. With some limitations, I guess. There was a couple of things that put me off once or twice.
Yes?
Or being blindfolded for some reason. I lost my erection immediately. They were trying to be super seductive and they put a blindfold on and instantly, gone.
Because does it draw power from you staring at it the whole time and never making eye contact with the other person? You just stare at your own dick?
I don't know. I don't know what happened. It was like, my brain was like, nope, sorry.
I don't think you're alone in that.
But other than that, it's not like there's anything that's ever been done to me that I'm like, yes, oh my God, this is the best, more. I want more of that. Like, I've never had that. For me, it's more about giving pleasure to the other person. I see it almost as a performance, sex with another person. Whereas if I was going to please myself and it's about my own pleasure, probably masturbation's fine.
See, okay, so maybe that's just you. I don't know. I find for me that it's not about there's a thing that I want. In general, it's more that in the moment, maybe I really want to do this or have this thing done. And to be able to express that is important if you actually want it to happen. But I'm not saying it's like some underlying, I always need to be spanked 12 times on the left butt cheek. It's not as specific as that. It's not as consistent as that. It's just being willing in the moment to decide I'm going to lead. Like, it's a dance.
Oh,
and this time I'm going to lead.
As I've matured, I've become quite happy to lead. So I'm still pleasing the other person, but it's by doing what I want to do to them.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. It's not about this is just purely my pleasure. No, it's always shared. I hope. I think that's what healthy sex is about, but being willing to lead.
No, that's fine. I'm cool with that. It's become something I'm comfortable with and I enjoy doing. Whereas in the past, it was more the other way. Like, what can I do to make this machine work? Which of the buttons?
Press this, turn this knob, so to speak. I feel I'm in the best relationship of my life, which is great because you would only want that to be in the present.
Yeah, talking about it in the past.
And part of that is the dynamic we have of sometimes he's leading it, sometimes I'm leading, and that can be like, be it buying food in the shops or having the most mind-blowing sex of my life. That it's fun and nice to be able to not feel you have to be one thing or the other and to enjoy the back and forth. Yeah,
I think people sometimes get overcommitted to one side of a fetish. Like, oh, I must be dominant, or I must be submissive, or I must, this, I do this, whereas they do. Like, whereas, I think it's more fun to be fluid in role, in all of it. Like, it's meant to be playful. Like, if you're not experiencing all of it, it seems kind of boring to me. Like, if I'm like, nope, this is exactly the kind of sex I enjoy each and every time.
Only this. So, to wrap up, some positive things to do in terms of being able to set better boundaries for yourself, along with what we've said, to be able to feel confident in yourself and to be able to ask for what you need. Spend time alone intentionally and make sure that you make it clear that you need that from other people, be it friends or a potential lover or your partner. Meet your own needs and state what they are to other people.
Yeah.
Don't think that they're going to guess them, and don't be pissed off when you don't get them later. But also don't tolerate them making it simply a statement about themselves. Be kind and sensitive when you lay it out, but use humor sometimes. Like I said, I try and do it as a kind of, I want you to know this is not a statement about you. This isn't something you've done. This is something I need.
Mm.
And people can't really argue with that. They can try and they can throw a strop, but you're saying something that's true about yourself. Everything else then is just their interpretation, but you're just saying, no, this is a thing I need.
Yeah.
Don't blame other people for how you feel. Don't say you're making me mad, but say, I'm feeling anger right now. I'm feeling angry. Like, the language of it can be really important because arguments go crazy and escalate when you're saying, you did this to me, you made me feel this way, that's so like guilt, blame.
Yeah. If ever these words come out of your mouth, you always, or you never, you have to go in the corner and take a timeout.
Yeah.
Put yourself in a timeout. Thank yourself. You're a bad person.
Because it's not true.
No.
When you say you always and you never, don't go for the superlatives. Just say, and you go for language more like, when you say this, I feel like.
Yeah.
When you say this, I feel this way. When you say that you want me to spend more time with you than we currently do, I feel like...
And not, it makes me feel.
Yeah.
I feel.
I feel like I'm not going to have enough time for myself. And I do want to spend quality time with you. Let's work out that. But my initial reaction, the way that I feel is, I'm not going to have the time I need for myself. And then the conversation, and it's a conversation rather than an argument, can develop from that point. Something that comes up in the No More Mr. Nice Guy book is connect with other men, if we're talking from the position of it actually being about guys and straight guys in this case. But I think we could expand that out to be spend time with friends who are just your friends. Don't just be essentially isolated in a relationship where the only people that you know are just your colleagues and then your partner.
Spend time with other human beings.
Yeah.
Make a lot of conversations in which there is no agenda. Because then when you find someone that you might want to have an agenda with, you know how to talk without an agenda and not just about your agenda. If the only time you interact with females, is, or I guess if we're taking, could be same-sex nice guys, I guess.
There are. They're awful.
But if the only time you kind of interact that way is purely in a transactional purpose, you're not going to be interesting. You need to be able to have interesting, thoughtful conversations where you actually care what the other person is saying or thinking, irrespective of whether you want to get into their pants.
One of the funnest and sexiest kind of modes to be in is, hey, I'm just really enjoying the experience right now. Yeah, I'd like it if we ended up in bed, but this is a great time anyway. Everything on top is a bonus. And that's when I've been in that mindset, I can't really think of a time that I didn't get laid. Oh no, once. Yeah. But you know, that was the hope on that date that would happen. But I was like, well, I'm just going to have to see how it goes, you know, just enjoy the situation and be like, hey, would you like to come back to my place? Don't worry if not, no pressure. I'm having a great time. We can just hang out here. And almost all of the time there's okay. And more fun unfolds.
Cool.
But maybe I was also being too nice in those scenarios. So there we go. I hope that helped people.
I thought it was quite fun to talk about it.
I wonder if we're going to get angry responses from nice guys because they're not nice. I love that. You don't get a cookie for being nice. Nice is the basic fucking entry requirement into being...
Nice is what you're supposed to be.
So, as well as all that, and until... No, wait, let me shout out. Watch on the video and you'll see I'm wearing one of Jamie's t-shirts.
Human.
This is the human t-shirt. You can get an alien t-shirt.
Oh, no, wait. If we get it, you said that it's going to look like we're a gay couple again.
People already think we're a gay couple. So.
All right, so no matching clothes. Fine.
Well, you can have the alien. I'll have the human. We'll see. Anyway, they're very cool. Jamie's an artist and designer, so... he, as well as making like incredible sculptures out of concrete and glass and renewable materials and drawing breathtaking pictures with pencil and all this, he's also making some cool clothes. So go check him out, jamiecjohnstone.com, our kind of unofficial sponsor of the show. I guess he sponsors my happiness.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So come see the video of that. If you want us to talk about things within this series or to do with the other things we talk about, please write to us through the various social channels. You can go on voicesinthedark.world, use the chat box, facebook.com/vinthed, vinthed.pod on Instagram. Basically, fuck Twitter. I mention it sometimes, but fuck Twitter. Until we see you next time.
In life and in the bedroom.
Please be silly, be kind, and be weird.